Hi everyone, my name is Rainer, this is Rainierbooks, and today is Tuesday, and it's Tag Tuesday, and I was tagged by Hannah from Hannah's Books for the Reread tag, and this is a tag that was started, as far as I could find out, by Roz from Scallydandling About the Books. So today I do the Reread tag. Thanks Hannah for tagging me. The questions. Number one. Let's assume you do a reread if you're doing this tag. So where do you sit on the rereading scale from almost never to all the time? Well, I would ask a return question to that question would be how big, how is the scale? Is this 10-point scale, a 5-point scale, a 3-point scale? I think I'm today at my current age and my current period of life, I would say I'm almost never rereading books, which is primarily the reason is that I have, there are so many books out there, there's so many books out there that I want to read and that are on my different TBRs that I go from one book to the next book, from one new book to the next new book in order to sort of make it, in order to reduce my shelves and in order to find new titles, which doesn't mean that I've never reread books. I think when I studied literature, German and English and American literature at the university in Aachen many years ago, of course. And of course at the time as a student reader writing papers about books, about plays, about poems, we were forced to reread books many times. And I have read Der böse Geist des Sympathie Vagabundos, played by Johann Nestroy from the 19th century a couple of times. And I read Mrs. Dalloway at least twice, I think, by Virginia Woolf, because it was on our list, it was on our canon, a book that we had to know a lot about. And so, but today I'm really more on the almost never part of the scale. I actually reread one novel that I had read as a young teenager, probably 14, 15 years old, and that is a novel by one of the most, by an author who's not so well known, but who's a great author. I loved him when I was young, and I might reread his work, and this is Eric Ambler, and I read his Dirty Story for a couple of months ago, for the first time in about 40 years, and I really remembered a lot of things that happened in that novel, with Arthur Abdel Simpson. The first part of this novel, Dirty Story, the first book, top copy, was actually also turned into a movie with Peter Ustinov as Arthur Abdel Simpson. This is a great novel. I reread it, and this was my reread of the year 2020 so far. How has that changed over your reading life? As I said, it's the second question. I almost answered it, but the first question has changed. When I was a student, I had to reread a lot more. Now that I'm growing older and time is more valuable to me, I think that I take more the next book and the next book and the next book. It's different with music, where you listen to old favorites at the time, but also listen to new stuff all the time. Third question, when do you reread? Maybe immediately after finishing a book or not till years later or when the mood strikes? Well, as I said, I reread a lot when I was a student at university, at college, but now I have done the case with Eric Ambler's novel that I took several decades to reread this novel, Dirty Story, and when the mood strikes, I might... From time to time I might go, I have actually picked up Girl, Woman, Other again by Bernardine Evaristo that I read earlier this year, in the beginning of the year, and to look at certain parts of the book, not rereading the whole book, but looking at certain parts of her language, of her use of language, and so on and so on. So that has happened very recently, actually. Why do you reread books? I think it's interesting to reread books at the time, even if I don't do it that much these days. I think it could be very interesting because you're always in a certain mood when you read books, and this mood is influencing your reading experience, your evaluation of the book that you're reading. It's always influenced by the time in which you perceive, in which you made that reading experience. So this is very important to, and if you reread, you might be in a different sort of mood. Maybe you were in a bad mood when you read the book for the first time. Maybe you're in a great mood and very happy and joyful when you read it for the second time. Maybe you sit at the Pacific Ocean in Rockaway Beach, Oregon when you pick up a book for the first time. Maybe you reread it while sitting in a thunderstorm at home. So this is certainly influencing your mood. So the question was actually, why do you reread books? And yeah, why? Because really, that the mood is different, and that could be a reason to reread stuff. And also to sort of get another point from yourself about the evaluation that you made many years ago. I would really like to reread J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye, because that's a book that I've reread many times when I was in school, high school. Maybe I would get a totally different reading experience when I read it now. So I might do that this year or next. How do you reread? Faster, slower, just the best bits? Today I would say mostly the best bits, that I'm looking for certain parts. I want to know how the author did this or did that. And that's why I reread certain parts, certain pages of the books when I pick them up again. Like I did with Bernardine Evaristo's Girl, Woman, Other. Who or what do you reread? More specifically, which authors or genres or individual books? I see myself having difficulties in picking up a thriller for the second time, like a whodunit. You know, when I know who did it, it's not so interesting. When you know a novel with lots of twists and turns, like thriller and crime genre, in the thriller and crime genre, that might be very, very difficult to reread something like that. Otherwise, the reason can always be which authors or individual books. Yeah, like I said, Evaristo. There are, of course, classical authors like Hemingway or Faulkner that really need a second pickup. Is there a book that you found better when you reread it? Not yet, I have to admit it, because I haven't reread so many books in general. To 100%. And one that was worse, I think that happens, of course, that you re-pick up books that you read as a very young person, when your experience, your canon, the books that you have read in your life, weren't so many. Maybe you had only read 5, 10, 15, 20 books when you were younger, or when you were very young, and then years later when you have read hundreds and maybe thousands of books, then you realize maybe that wasn't so good, what I read at the time. And that's why I want to reread Salinger, actually, to find out if I like it that much as I liked it when I was 16, 17 years old. So I'm going to find out that. And the last question already is number 9. Which one book have you reread most times? And that would actually be, I think, J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye, because when we went to high school, we discussed that book for about a year in school. So I always was rereading. We were always rereading chapters. And I think many people who went to school with me, my friends at the time, they have reread. It must be the book that they have reread most times in their entire lives. So that is probably the book from my generation, from that school, Gymnasium Odenkirchen, where I went to in the 1980s. 1982, I finished school there. Oh my God, that was a long time ago. And that was J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye. And that completes the Reread Book Tag. Thank you very much for watching this. I hope you have a great Tuesday, Tag Tuesday. I hope that you do a wonderful tag. If you don't do videos on BookTube, doesn't matter. You do what you like. You do what you feel you have to do. I hope you join me in my next video. And I thank you very much. Bye-bye.